My name is Daniel Carter, and today I'm going to tell you about the moment everything changed in my life. The night God spoke directly into my chaos and told me to stop overthinking because He would guide every single step. Before I go any further, I want to ask you something. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone you love who might need to hear this message today. And down in the comments, tell me about your own experience with overthinking or share what you're struggling with right now. Your story matters, and I'd love to hear it. I was 32 years old when my life felt like it was falling apart from the inside out. On paper, everything looked fine. I had a decent job as a software engineer, a small apartment in the city, a handful of friends. But inside my mind, there was a war happening every single day. I couldn't make a decision without second-guessing it 100 times. Should I take that new project at work? What if I fail? Should I text that girl I met at church? What if she thinks I'm weird? Should I move to a different city? What if it's the wrong choice and I regret it forever? Every morning I woke up exhausted before the day even began. My brain never stopped running. It was like having 50 browser tabs open at once, all of them playing different sounds, all of them demanding my attention. I'd lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations from 5 years ago, analyzing every word I said, every facial expression I made, wondering what people thought of me, wondering if I was good enough, smart enough, spiritual enough. I prayed, of course. I prayed all the time. But my prayers were just more overthinking dressed up in religious language. God, should I do this or that? Give me a sign. Actually, was that a sign? Or was I just imagining it? Maybe I should pray more. Maybe I'm not hearing you because I'm not spiritual enough. Maybe I need to fast. Maybe... It never ended. I started avoiding decisions altogether. I turned down job opportunities because I couldn't decide if they were right. I stopped going to social events because I'd spend days beforehand anxious about what to wear, what to say, how to act. I even stopped reading my Bible regularly because every verse felt like another thing I was failing at, another standard I couldn't meet. My friend Marcus noticed. We'd been friends since college, and he was one of those steady, grounded people who seemed to have life figured out. One afternoon, we met for coffee, and he looked at me across the table with genuine concern. "Dan, what's going on with you, man? You seem like you're carrying the weight of the world." I tried to brush it off. "I'm fine, just busy, you know, work stuff." He didn't buy it. "You've been saying that for months, but you don't look fine. You look exhausted. When's the last time you actually rested?" I couldn't answer him. I couldn't remember the last time my mind was quiet, the last time I felt peace. I shrugged and changed the subject, but his words stayed with me. That night, I sat in my apartment alone. The TV was off, my phone was on silent, and for the first time in months, I just sat in the silence. It was uncomfortable. All my thoughts came rushing in like a flood. Every worry, every fear, every mistake I'd ever made, every possible future disaster my brain could invent, they all crashed over me at once. I felt my chest tighten. My breathing got shallow. I recognized the signs of a panic attack starting to build. I'd had them before, usually late at night when the overthinking got too intense. I stood up and paced around my living room, trying to calm down. But it only got worse. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. I felt like I was drowning in my own mind. And then, in desperation, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I got down on my knees, not to recite a prayer I'd memorized, not to ask for another sign, not to analyze whether I was praying correctly. I just knelt there and broke. "God," I whispered, and my voice cracked. "I can't do this anymore. I don't know how to stop. My mind won't shut off. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of being afraid, of second-guessing everything, of feeling like I'm going to mess up my entire life with one wrong decision. I don't know what to do. Please, please help me." I stayed there on my knees, tears running down my face, my whole body trembling. And then, in the quietest, most gentle way, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from figuring everything out, not the kind that comes from having a perfect plan. This was different. It was like someone had walked into the room and placed a hand on my shoulder, like a father calming a frightened child. And then I heard it. Not with my ears, but with something deeper, a voice so clear, so calm, so certain that it cut through every anxious thought in my mind. Stop overthinking. I will guide every step. I froze. The words echoed in my spirit, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, my mind went completely still. The chaos stopped. The noise disappeared. And in that moment, I knew that God had just spoken to me. I don't know how long I stayed there on my knees. It could have been 5 minutes or an hour, but when I finally stood up, something had shifted inside me. The weight I'd been carrying felt lighter. Not gone. I knew I still had struggles ahead, but lighter. I walked over to my Bible, which had been sitting unopened on my coffee table for weeks, and I picked it up. It fell open to Proverbs, and my eyes landed on chapter 3, verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. I'd read that verse 100 times before. I'd even memorized it as a kid in Sunday school, but this time it hit different. This time it wasn't just words on a page. It was an invitation, a command, a promise. God wasn't asking me to figure everything out. He wasn't waiting for me to have the perfect plan or make the perfect decisions. He was asking me to trust him, to stop leaning on my own understanding, my own endless analysis, my own fearful projections, and to simply trust that he would guide me. I sat down on my couch and just breathed, deep, slow breaths, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to hope. Over the next few days, I noticed something strange. The thoughts were still there, the worries, the what-ifs, the fears, but they didn't have the same power over me. When they came, I'd remember those words. Stop overthinking. I will guide every step, and something in me would settle. I started practicing it like a discipline. When I'd catch myself spiraling, I'd stop and say out loud, God, you said you'd guide me. I'm trusting you with this. And slowly, day by day, I started to feel like I could breathe again. Looking back now, I realize that moment on my knees wasn't just about God giving me peace for one night. It was the beginning of a completely different way of living, a way where I didn't have to have all the answers, a way where I could take one step at a time, trusting that the one who created me knew the path better than I ever could. If you're reading this and you've been stuck in your head, paralyzed by fear, exhausted from trying to control every outcome, I want you to know something. You don't have to figure it all out. You were never meant to carry that burden. God is with you and he's ready to guide you. All you have to do is trust him, one step at a time. Subscribe if you want to hear more of this journey. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And leave a comment. Tell me what's been weighing on your mind. Let's walk this path together. The next morning, I woke up feeling different, not completely transformed, not like all my problems had vanished overnight, but something had definitely shifted. The usual dread that greeted me every morning, that heavy feeling of facing another day of decisions I wasn't sure I could make, wasn't as suffocating. I made coffee and sat by the window in my small apartment, watching the city wake up. People hurried down the sidewalk, cars honked in traffic, the world moved at its relentless pace. But inside my little space, there was stillness. I thought about the words I'd heard the night before. Stop overthinking. I will guide every step. They felt like a lifeline, something solid to hold on to when everything else felt uncertain. But old habits die hard. By mid-morning, I was already slipping back into familiar patterns. I had a meeting at work about a new project, and immediately my mind started racing. Should I volunteer to lead it? What if I mess up? What if everyone sees that I'm not as capable as they think? What if I say yes, and it's too much pressure? What if I say no, and they think I'm lazy? I caught myself spiraling and physically shook my head, trying to clear the noise. I remembered what happened the night before. I closed my eyes right there at my desk and whispered under my breath, God, you said you'd guide me. I'm trusting you with this. The anxiety didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip just enough for me to breathe, just enough for me to think clearly. When the meeting started, I listened instead of obsessing over what I would say. And when the moment came, I simply raised my hand and volunteered. No analysis, no spiraling, just a decision. My manager, Lisa, smiled. "Great, Daniel. I think you'll do well with this." I nodded, trying to ignore the voice in my head that wanted to tear apart every word she'd just said, searching for hidden meanings. Instead, I just said, "Thanks. I'll do my best." That afternoon, Marcus texted me, "Hey man, want to grab dinner tonight?" Normally, I would have spent 20 minutes crafting the perfect response, weighing whether I was too busy, whether I'd be good company, whether he actually wanted to hang out, or was just being polite. But this time, I just typed back, "Yeah, sounds good. Where?" Simple, direct, no overthinking. We met at a small Italian place near his apartment. Marcus ordered pasta, I got pizza, and we fell into easy conversation. Halfway through the meal, he looked at me and said, "You seem different today." I paused, fork in hand. "Different how?" "I don't know. Lighter, maybe. Less in your head." I set down my fork and told him what happened. About the panic attack, about getting on my knees, about the words I heard. I expected him to look skeptical or uncomfortable. People don't always know what to do when you talk about hearing God's voice. But Marcus just nodded slowly. "Man, that's powerful," he said. "I've been praying for you, you know. I could see you were struggling, and I didn't know how to help." His words hit me harder than I expected. Someone had been praying for me. Someone had noticed my pain and brought it before God. I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thanks, Marcus. That means a lot." He smiled. "So what now? How do you keep this going? Because I know you, Dan. You're great at having breakthrough moments and then sliding right back into your old patterns." He wasn't wrong. I'd had moments of clarity before, times when I felt close to God, times when I promised myself I'd change. But then life would happen. Stress would creep back in, and I'd end up right where I started. "I don't know," I admitted. "I guess I just have to keep remembering what he said, keep choosing to trust instead of spiraling." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe you need to write it down. Put it somewhere you'll see it every day." That night I took his advice. I found an index card and wrote in bold letters, "Stop overthinking, God will guide every step." I taped it to my bathroom mirror, right where I'd see it first thing every morning. The next few days were an experiment in trust. Small moments, small decisions, small opportunities to choose faith over fear. When I couldn't decide what to make for dinner, instead of standing in front of the fridge for 15 minutes, I just grabbed something and moved on. When a friend invited me to a party and my brain immediately started listing all the reasons I shouldn't go, I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. Each time I made a decision without overthinking it, I felt a little more free. Like I was slowly dismantling a prison I'd built in my own mind. But then Friday came. I got an email from my boss. The subject line read, "Need to talk, Monday morning." That was it. No context, no explanation, just those 5 words. Immediately, every worst-case scenario flooded my brain. I was getting fired. I'd done something wrong. The project I'd just volunteered for was a test, and I'd already failed. They were eliminating my position. I was going to lose my job, my apartment, everything. My heart raced. My hands went cold. I read the email 10 times, searching for clues, analyzing the punctuation, the tone, the timing. Why would she send this on a Friday afternoon? Was that strategic? Was she trying to ruin my weekend? I spent the entire evening pacing my apartment, my mind running wild. I tried to pray, but my prayers just turned into more anxious thoughts. I tried to distract myself with TV, but I couldn't focus. I tried to sleep, but I just lay there staring at the ceiling. By Saturday morning I was exhausted. I'd barely slept, and my mind felt like it was fracturing under the weight of uncertainty. I stumbled into the bathroom and saw the index card on my mirror. "Stop overthinking. God will guide every step." I stared at those words and I felt anger rise up in me. Easy to say, I thought bitterly. Easy to write on a card. But what about when real things happen? What about when your job is on the line? But underneath the anger, there was something else. A small voice, barely audible, whispering the same truth I'd heard that night on my knees. I will guide every step. I gripped the edge of the sink and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked terrible. Dark circles under my eyes, tension in my jaw, fear written all over my face. God, I said out loud, my voice shaking. I don't know what that email means. I don't know what's going to happen Monday, and I'm scared. But you told me to stop overthinking. You told me you'd guide me. So I'm choosing to trust you. Even though it's hard, even though I don't understand, I'm choosing to trust you. Something broke open in my chest. Not peace, not yet, but something like surrender. Like finally letting go of the illusion that I could control everything if I just thought about it hard enough. I took a shower, got dressed, and decided to do something I almost never did. I went for a walk with no destination in mind. No plan, no purpose, just walking. I ended up at a park I'd passed 100 times, but never actually entered. There was a small pond, some benches, a few families with kids playing. I sat down and just watched. The world kept turning. People kept living. And somehow, that was comforting. I pulled out my phone and opened my Bible app. I didn't have a specific verse in mind, but I felt like I needed to read something. I scrolled to Philippians and started reading chapter 4. When I got to verses 6 and 7, I stopped. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. The peace of God, which transcends all understanding. I read that line 3 times. That's what I'd felt that night on my knees. That's what I was searching for now. A peace that didn't make logical sense. A peace that existed even when circumstances were uncertain, even when I didn't have answers. I closed my eyes and prayed right there on that park bench. Not an eloquent prayer, not a perfectly worded request. Just honest words from a tired heart. God, I'm presenting this situation to you. This email, this fear, this weekend of not knowing, I'm giving it to you. I don't know what Monday will bring, but I'm choosing to trust that you do. Guard my heart. Guard my mind. Give me your peace. When I opened my eyes, the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I sat there watching until it got dark, and for the first time all weekend, I felt like I could breathe. That night, I slept. Not perfectly, but better than the night before, and when I woke up Sunday morning, the fear was still there, but it wasn't suffocating me anymore. I went to church that morning, something I'd been skipping more often than not in recent months. The worship felt different that day. The words of the songs about God's faithfulness, His guidance, His peace, they weren't just nice phrases anymore. They were lifelines. During the sermon, the pastor talked about Abraham being called to leave everything familiar and go to a place he'd never been, trusting only God's promise to guide him. Abraham didn't have a map, the pastor said. He didn't have a detailed plan. He just had God's word and a willingness to take the next step. I thought about my index card. I will guide every step. Not every mile, not the whole journey, just every step, one at a time. Monday morning came. I got dressed, looked at my index card one more time, and drove to work. My hands were shaking slightly as I walked into the building, but I kept whispering under my breath, one step at a time, you're guiding me, one step at a time. Dee, when I got to Lisa's office, she was smiling. That was a good sign, right? Or was she just being professional before delivering bad news? Daniel, come in. Close the door. I sat down, my heart pounding. She folded her hands on her desk and looked at me. I wanted to talk to you about something important. We've been really impressed with your work lately, and we've noticed a shift in your engagement and confidence. The leadership team met last week, and we'd like to offer you a promotion, senior engineer with a team lead position. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. A promotion? She laughed. Yes, a promotion. You seem surprised. I was more than surprised. I was stunned, All weekend, I'd been convinced I was getting fired, and instead, I was being offered a promotion. Thank you. I don't know what to say. You don't have to decide right now, she said. Take a few days to think about it. But we really believe you're ready for this. I walked out of her office in a daze. When I got back to my desk, I just sat there, staring at my computer screen, trying to process what had just happened. And then I started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but a real, genuine laugh that made my co-workers look over curiously. I'd spent an entire weekend torturing myself over worst-case scenarios that had no basis in reality. I'd created an entire catastrophe in my mind, and the actual reality was the complete opposite. I pulled out my phone and texted Marcus. "You're not going to believe what just happened." That night, I got down on my knees again, but this time, it wasn't out of desperation. It was out of gratitude, out of awe, out of a growing realization that God really was guiding me, even when I couldn't see it, even when my mind wanted to write a different story. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for guiding me. Thank you for that promotion. But more than that, thank you for teaching me to trust you. Thank you for being patient with me when I spiral. Thank you for showing me that your plans are better than my fears." As I knelt there, I thought about how much had changed in just 1 week. The overthinking wasn't gone. I knew it would probably be something I'd wrestle with for a long time. But now I had something I didn't have before. I had a promise. I had a practice. And I had proof that God was faithful to his word, 1 step at a time. That's all I needed to take. And he would guide every single one. The promotion changed things, but not in the way I expected. I thought getting recognized at work would somehow validate me, make me feel more confident, quieter in my mind. Instead, it opened up a whole new arena for overthinking. I had a team now, 3 junior engineers who looked to me for direction, for answers, for leadership. And every time they asked me a question, every time I had to make a decision that affected not just me, but them, the old familiar spiral would try to start up again. What if I lead them wrong? What if my inexperience shows? What if I'm not actually ready for this, and everyone realizes they made a mistake promoting me? But something was different now. I had tools I didn't have before. Every morning, when I saw that index card on my mirror, I'd pause and actually read it, let it sink in. And throughout the day, when I felt the overthinking starting, I'd catch it faster. Not perfectly, not every time, but more often than before. One afternoon, about 3 weeks into my new role, one of my team members, a young guy named Jason, came to my desk with a problem. A client was upset about a bug in the software, and Jason had spent hours trying to fix it with no success. He looked stressed, almost panicked. "I don't know what to do, Daniel. I've tried everything I can think of. What if we can't fix it? What if the client leaves?" I saw myself in him. That fear of failure, that catastrophic thinking that turns a problem into an apocalypse. A few months ago, I would have absorbed his panic and made it my own, would have stayed up all night spiraling about all the ways this could go wrong. Instead, I took a breath and said, "Let's look at it together. Walk me through what you've tried so far." We spent the next hour going through his code, testing different solutions. I didn't have all the answers, but I didn't need to. We figured it out together, step by step. When we finally fixed the bug, Jason's whole face lit up. "Man, thank you. I was freaking out." I smiled. "I know the feeling, but panicking doesn't fix bugs. Taking it 1 step at a time does." As he walked back to his desk, I realized something. God wasn't just teaching me to trust him for my own sake. He was teaching me so I could help others do the same. My struggle with overthinking, my journey toward trust, it wasn't just about me. That weekend I went to visit my mom. I hadn't seen her in a couple months, and the moment she opened the door, she pulled me into a hug. "Daniel, you look different. You look lighter." I laughed. Marcus had said the same thing. "I feel different, Mum." We sat in her living room with coffee, and I told her everything. About the panic attack, about hearing God's voice, about the promotion, about learning to trust instead of overthink. She listened with tears in her eyes. "I've been praying for you for years," she said softly. "I watched you struggle so much in your own head, and I didn't know how to help. I'm so glad God reached you." "You helped more than you know," I told her. "You taught me to pray, to read the Bible, to believe God was real. I just had to learn how to actually trust Him with my life, not just acknowledge Him in theory." She squeezed my hand. "That's the hardest part, isn't it? Believing God exists is one thing. Trusting Him with your actual daily life, with your fears and decisions, that's where real faith lives." Her words stayed with me on the drive home. Real faith wasn't just believing in God. It was trusting Him in the moments when everything felt uncertain, when I didn't have answers, when my mind wanted to take control and figure everything out on its own. The following Tuesday, something happened that tested this trust in a new way. I got a call from my landlord. The building was being sold, and the new owners were planning to renovate and raise the rent significantly. I had 60 days to decide, pay almost double what I was currently paying, or move out. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest. Where would I go? How would I find a new place in 60 days? What if I couldn't afford anything in the city? What if I had to move far away and my commute became impossible? What if this disrupted everything right when my career was finally taking off? The spiral started, but this time I recognized it immediately. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of a grocery store when the call came, and I just sat there gripping the steering wheel, feeling the anxiety try to take over. "No," I said out loud. "No, God, I'm not doing this. You told me you'd guide every step. This is a step I don't know how to take, but you do, so I'm trusting you. Show me what to do." I sat there for another minute, breathing deeply, praying, choosing to trust. And then, almost instinctively, I pulled out my phone and texted Marcus. "Hey, my building is being sold. Need to find a new place in 60 days. Know of anything?" His response came back almost immediately. "Actually, yeah. My neighbor is moving out next month. It's a 2-bedroom. Want me to ask if you can see it?" I stared at the text. Marcus lived in a great neighborhood, and I'd always thought it was out of my price range, but with the promotion, maybe it wasn't anymore. "Yes, please." 3 days later, I was standing in an apartment that was bigger and nicer than my current place, in a neighborhood I loved, for only slightly more than what I was paying now. The timing was perfect. The location was perfect. Even the lease start date lined up exactly with when I needed to move out of my old place. As I signed the lease, I thought about all the hours I could have spent panicking about this situation, all the worst-case scenarios I could have invented. Instead, I'd chosen to trust, and God had provided a solution better than anything I could have orchestrated myself. But life wasn't suddenly perfect. Learning to trust didn't mean all my problems disappeared. It meant I was learning a different way to face them. A few weeks later, I was at church when I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, a girl named Rachel who I'd known in college. We'd been in the same small group, and I'd always thought she was amazing, but never had the courage to tell her. Now, here she was, sitting 3 rows ahead of me, and all the old insecurities came flooding back. Should I say hi? What if she doesn't remember me? What if I'm awkward? What if she's married? What if she thinks I'm hitting on her and it makes things weird? The service ended and I watched her stand up to leave. I could feel my heart racing. And then I heard that familiar whisper in my spirit, "Stop overthinking. I will guide every step." Before I could talk myself out of it, I walked over. "Rachel?" She turned, and her face broke into a genuine smile. "Daniel, oh my gosh, how are you?" We talked for 20 minutes in the lobby, and it was easy, natural. She wasn't married. She'd actually just moved back to the area for work. We exchanged numbers and agreed to grab coffee sometime. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, possibility. Not the anxious, overthinking kind of possibility where I project every scenario and outcome. Just simple, open possibility. Maybe we'd become friends again. Maybe it would turn into something more. Maybe it wouldn't. But for once, I was okay not knowing. I was okay taking one step at a time and seeing where it led. That night, I wrote in a journal I'd recently started keeping. It was something my therapist had suggested. I'd started seeing one a few weeks after the promotion, wanting to build on the progress I was making. The journal wasn't about overthinking or analyzing. It was just about noticing what God was doing, noticing how I was changing, noticing the moments when I chose trust over fear. I wrote, "Today I talked to Rachel without spiraling. I signed a lease without panicking. I'm leading a team without constantly doubting myself. None of this is because I suddenly have all the answers or because my mind magically stopped overthinking. It's because I'm learning to trust the one who does have the answers, one step at a time, and he's been faithful to every single step." The next morning at work, Lisa called me into her office. For a split second, the old fear tried to creep in. What if something was wrong? But I pushed it aside and walked in with confidence. "Daniel, we have a potential client presentation next week. Big company, big contract. I'd like you to lead it." A few months ago, I would have immediately started overthinking. What if I mess it up? What if I'm not ready? What if I say something stupid and we lose the client? Instead, I just nodded. "I'd be honored. What do I need to know?" She smiled. "That's what I like to hear. You've really grown into this role, Daniel. Your team respects you, your work is solid, and you carry yourself with a confidence I didn't see before. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." As I walked back to my desk, I realized something profound. The confidence she saw wasn't coming from me having everything figured out. It was coming from me knowing who to trust when I didn't have everything figured out. It was coming from me learning to take steps without needing to see the whole staircase. That weekend, Rachel and I met for coffee. We talked about everything. Our jobs, our families, what we'd been through over the past few years. I told her about my struggle with overthinking, about the night I heard God speak to me, about the journey I'd been on since then. She listened intently, and when I finished, she said something that surprised me. "I've struggled with that too, not the same way you describe it, but I've definitely lived in my head, paralyzed by fear of making wrong choices. It's encouraging to hear how you're working through it." We talked for 3 hours, and when we finally said goodbye, she hugged me and said, "Let's do this again soon." Walking to my car, I felt gratitude wash over me. Not just for the good conversation, not just for the possibility of reconnecting with Rachel, but for the whole journey, for the panic attack that brought me to my knees, for the words God spoke that changed everything, for every moment I'd chosen to trust instead of spiral. I was far from perfect. I still had moments where the overthinking tried to take over. I still had days where I had to fight for peace. But I was learning, I was growing, and most importantly, I was discovering that God's promise was real. He was guiding every step, and as long as I kept trusting Him, kept choosing faith over fear, kept taking one step at a time, I was going to be okay. Better than okay. I was going to experience a life I never thought possible, a life of peace, purpose, and genuine connection, a life where my mind didn't rule me. A life where God led, and I simply followed. And that, I was discovering, was the freest way to live. The client presentation came faster than I expected. I spent the week preparing, rehearsing, trying to anticipate every possible question they might ask. But this time, the preparation didn't feel like anxious overthinking. It felt like diligent work. There was a difference, and I was learning to recognize it. Preparing was wise. Spiraling was wasteful. The morning of the presentation, I woke up early. I made coffee, sat by the window, and opened my Bible. I'd been reading through the Psalms lately, and that morning I landed on Psalm 32, verse 8. "I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you." I read it 3 times, letting it sink in. God wasn't just guiding me from a distance. He was watching me with love, counseling me, instructing me. I wasn't alone in this presentation. I wasn't alone in anything. The presentation went better than I could have imagined. I spoke clearly, answered questions confidently, and even cracked a few jokes that landed well. The clients seemed impressed, and by the end of the meeting, they were shaking hands and talking about next steps. As we walked out of the conference room, Lisa pulled me aside. "That was excellent, Daniel. Really excellent. You handled that like a seasoned professional." I smiled, but internally I was thanking God. Because I knew the truth. It wasn't just my skill or preparation. It was His guidance, His peace, His presence that carried me through. That evening, Rachel texted me, "How'd the big presentation go?" It surprised me that she remembered. We'd only had coffee once, but she'd been paying attention. I texted back, "Really well, better than expected. Want to celebrate? I know a great taco place." I hesitated for only a second before responding, "Yes." "When? Tonight, 7 p.m.? Old Daniel would have spent an hour debating whether this was a date, what her intentions were, what I should wear, what I should say. New Daniel just texted back, "Perfect, send me the address." The taco place was casual, loud, and packed with people. We ordered at the counter and found a small table near the window. Rachel was easy to talk to, funny, thoughtful, genuine. She told me about her new job, the challenges of moving back to the city, the friends she was trying to reconnect with. "What about you?" she asked. "Besides work and learning to trust God more, what else is going on in your life?" I thought about it. Honestly, I'm just trying to be more present. I spent so many years living in my head, worrying about the future, replaying the past. I'm learning to just be here, right now, in this moment. She nodded slowly. "That's beautiful and hard. I think we all struggle with that." "Do you?" I asked. "You seem so together." She laughed. "I'm really not. I'm great at looking like I have it all figured out. But inside, I'm usually terrified I'm doing everything wrong." Her honesty surprised me, and somehow made me like her even more. "What are you most afraid of?" She was quiet for a moment, stirring her drink with her straw. "Wasting my life, making the wrong choices and waking up at 40, realizing I missed what I was supposed to do, who I was supposed to be." I understood that fear deeply. I think that's why overthinking became such a problem for me. I thought if I could just analyze every decision enough, I could avoid making mistakes, but all it did was paralyze me. "So how do you decide now?" she asked. "How do you know which choice is the right one?" "I pray. I ask God to guide me. And then I take the next step in front of me, even if I can't see the whole path. It's terrifying sometimes, but it's also freeing." We talked until the restaurant started closing, and then we stood outside on the sidewalk, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye. "Thank you for tonight," Rachel said. "I really needed this conversation." "Me too," she smiled. "Let's do it again soon." "Definitely." As I drove home, I felt something warm spreading through my chest. Hope. Not the anxious, overthinking kind of hope that comes with expectations and plans and trying to control outcomes. Just simple, quiet hope that something good might be beginning. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm. Work was busy, but manageable. My team was growing more confident, and I was learning to delegate instead of trying to control everything. Rachel and I texted regularly and met up once or twice a week, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for dinner, once for a walk through the park where I'd sat on that bench reading Philippians. My mum called one evening while I was making dinner. "How are you, sweetheart?" "I'm good, Mom. Really good. You sound happy." "Like genuinely happy." "I think I am," I said, surprised by my own answer. "When was the last time I could honestly say I was happy? Tell me everything." "What's going on?" I told her about work, about the presentation, about my team, and then, almost shyly, I told her about Rachel. "Oh, Daniel," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "That's wonderful. What's she like?" "She's real, honest, smart, kind. I don't know where it's going, and for once, I'm okay with that. I'm just enjoying getting to know her." "That's the healthiest thing I've ever heard you say about a relationship," Mom said. "You're really changing, aren't you?" "I think so. It's not easy. I still have moments where I slip back into old patterns, but I'm learning to catch myself faster. And I'm learning that trusting God doesn't mean life becomes perfect. It just means I don't have to carry everything alone. After we hung up, I sat on my couch thinking about what I'd just said. It was true. Life hadn't become perfect. I still faced challenges, still had difficult days, still had moments of doubt. But the weight was different, the burden was lighter, because I wasn't trying to carry it all by myself anymore. A few days later, something happened that tested this trust in a deeper way. I was at work when I got a call from my mum. Her voice was shaky. "Daniel, I need to tell you something. I went to the doctor yesterday, and they found something concerning. They're running more tests, but they think it might be cancer." The world tilted. All the air left my lungs. "What? What kind of cancer? When will you know for sure?" "I'll know more next week. I didn't want to tell you until I had more information, but I couldn't keep it from you." After we hung up, I sat at my desk, unable to move, unable to think. This was different from a stressful email or a job decision. This was my mum. This was real. This was terrifying. The overthinking tried to flood in immediately. What if it's serious? What if she doesn't make it? What if I lose her? What if the treatment doesn't work? What if... No. I said it out loud, right there at my desk. No. God, I need you right now. I don't know what this means. I don't know what's going to happen. But you told me you'd guide every step. This is a step I can't take without you. Please, please be with my mom. Please be with me. I got up and walked to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and let the tears come. I cried for my mom, for the fear I felt, for the uncertainty. But I also cried out to God, begging him for his presence, his peace, his guidance. When I finally pulled myself together and went back to my desk, I saw a text from Marcus. "Hey man, haven't heard from you in a few days. Everything okay?" I called him instead of texting back. "Can we talk?" He heard something in my voice. "I'll leave work right now. Meet me at the coffee shop in 20 minutes. Sitting across from Marcus, telling him about my mom, I felt the fear threaten to overwhelm me again. But Marcus just reached across the table and grabbed my shoulder. "We're going to pray right now. I don't care if people think it's weird. Your mum needs prayer, and so do you." Right there in the coffee shop, Marcus prayed. He prayed for healing, for peace, for wisdom for the doctors, for strength for my mom and our family. He prayed that God would be close to us in this, that his presence would be undeniable. When he finished, I felt steadier, not because the situation had changed, but because I'd been reminded I wasn't facing it alone. That evening, I drove to my mom's house. She looked tired but tried to smile when she opened the door. "You didn't have to come all the way here tonight, honey." Yes, I did. We sat on her couch, and I took her hand. "Mom, I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen, and that terrifies me. But I know God is with us. I know he's guided me through so much already, and I have to trust he'll guide us through this too." She squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. "You've grown so much, Daniel. A few months ago, you would have been spiraling right now. But you're choosing faith instead. That gives me so much hope." "You taught me that," I said. "You taught me to trust God even when things are hard. Now it's my turn to remind you of that truth." We prayed together, and then we just sat there holding hands, neither of us having all the answers, both of us choosing to trust the one who did. The next week was the longest of my life, waiting for test results, trying to focus at work, trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios. Rachel noticed something was off and asked about it. I told her everything, and she immediately offered to be there in whatever way I needed. "I can come with you to appointments, or I can just be someone you can text when you're freaking out. Whatever helps." Her kindness undid me. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Finally, the call came. I was driving home from work when my mom called. "It's not cancer. They thought it might be, but it's not. It's something they can treat easily. I'm going to be okay, Daniel." I had to pull over because I was crying too hard to see the road. Relief, gratitude, joy, it all crashed over me at once. "Thank you, God," I whispered through tears. "Thank you." That night, I called Marcus, texted Rachel, and thanked everyone who had been praying. And then I got down on my knees in my apartment and just worshipped. Not because God had given me the outcome I wanted, though I was grateful for that, but because He had been faithful through the uncertainty. He had been present in the fear. He had guided me through the hardest week I'd faced since this journey began. The next morning, I looked at my index card on the bathroom mirror. The edges were starting to curl. The tape was yellowing, but the words were still clear. Stop overthinking. God will guide every step. I'd tested that promise in dozens of situations now. Job decisions, relationship uncertainties, housing changes, health scares, and every single time, God had proven faithful. Not by making everything easy, not by removing every challenge, but by being present, by providing peace, by guiding me one step at a time. I was learning that faith wasn't about having all the answers. It was about trusting the one who did. And that trust, I was discovering, changed everything. With my mom's health scare behind us, I felt like I could breathe again. But the experience had changed something in me. It made me realize how much of my life I'd been living in fear of things that might happen, instead of being present for what was actually happening. I started being more intentional about gratitude. Every morning, before I even got out of bed, I'd list 3 things I was grateful for. Some days it was big things, my mom's health, my job, the people in my life. Other days it was small things, good coffee, sunshine through my window, a funny text from Marcus. This practice of gratitude did something to my brain. It gave my mind something to focus on besides worst-case scenarios. It trained me to look for the good instead of constantly scanning for potential disasters. Rachel noticed the change. We were having lunch one Saturday when she said, "You seem more settled, like you're not constantly somewhere else in your head." "I'm working on being present," I told her. "It's harder than it sounds." She smiled. "Everything worth doing is." We'd been spending more time together, and I could feel myself developing real feelings for her. But instead of overthinking it, instead of trying to analyze every interaction and predict every possible outcome, I was just letting it unfold naturally. One evening, we were walking through downtown after dinner when she suddenly stopped in front of a bookstore window. "Oh, I love this place. Want to go in?" We spent the next hour browsing shelves, recommending books to each other, sitting on the floor in the poetry section, reading verses out loud. It was simple, easy, perfect. As we were leaving, Rachel turned to me. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Of course. What are we doing? I mean, we've been hanging out a lot, and I really enjoy spending time with you, but I don't want to assume anything." Old Daniel would have panicked at this question, would have spent hours dissecting what she meant, what she wanted, what the right answer was. But new Daniel just told the truth. "I really like you, Rachel. I enjoy every moment we spend together. I'd like to see where this goes, if you're open to that." She smiled, and in the glow of the streetlight, she looked beautiful. "I'd like that too." "Good. So this is officially a thing now?" She laughed. "Yes, this is officially a thing." We held hands as we walked back to our cars, and I felt a joy I hadn't felt in years. Uncomplicated joy. Present joy. Not joy tinged with anxiety about the future or fear of messing things up. Just pure, simple happiness in the moment. At work, things continued to go well. The client we'd presented to signed a major contract, and Lisa made a point of telling everyone that my presentation had been a key factor in closing the deal. My team was functioning smoothly, and I was learning to trust them more, to delegate without micromanaging. But then something happened that challenged me in a new way. One of my team members, a woman named Sarah, who'd been with the company for 5 years, came to me visibly upset. She'd just been passed over for a promotion she'd been expecting, and she felt blindsided by it. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "I've done everything right. My work is solid. I've been here longer than people who've been promoted. Why not me?" I didn't have a good answer. I'd been in the meetings where promotion decisions were made, and I knew the reasons, but they felt insufficient and unfair. The truth was, sometimes decisions get made that don't make sense, that hurt people, that feel wrong. "I'm really sorry, Sarah. I know you were expecting this, and I know you deserve it. Then why didn't it happen? She was crying now, and I felt helpless. I thought about all the times I'd been passed over for things I wanted, all the times life didn't go according to my plans, and I thought about what I'd learned about trust, about God's guidance, about taking one step at a time. I don't know why, I said honestly. I wish I had a better answer, but I do know that you're talented, you're valuable to this team, and this doesn't define your worth or your future. Sometimes the path we're on takes detours we don't understand in the moment. She wiped her eyes. How do you deal with that? With not understanding? Honestly, I'm still learning, but I've found that trying to figure out why everything happens the way it does will drive you crazy. Sometimes you just have to trust that there's a bigger picture you can't see yet. After she left, I sat at my desk, feeling the weight of that conversation. It was one thing to trust God with my own disappointments. It was another to help someone else navigate theirs, especially when I couldn't fix it or explain it. That night I talked to Rachel about it. We were at her apartment, and I was helping her hang pictures on the wall. I felt so helpless, I told her. I couldn't give her the promotion. I couldn't even give her a good reason why she didn't get it. All I could offer was some generic advice about trust. Rachel stepped back from the wall, examining the picture we'd just hung. Maybe that's all she needed. Someone to acknowledge that it's hard and unfair, and that she's not crazy for feeling hurt. But I wanted to fix it. You can't always fix things, Daniel. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just be present with someone in their pain. Her words hit me hard. I'd spent so much of my life trying to fix everything, trying to control outcomes, trying to solve problems before they even occurred. But life didn't work that way. Sometimes things were just hard, and the only way through was through. A few weeks later, I got news that made me understand Sarah's situation from a different angle. My company was planning a major restructure. Some positions would be eliminated, others would be merged, and there was no guarantee about what would happen to anyone's role, including mine. The announcement came on a Tuesday afternoon, and by Wednesday morning, the entire office was buzzing with anxiety. People were updating their resumes, having hushed conversations in conference rooms, trying to read between the lines of every email from leadership. I felt the old familiar fear trying to creep in. What if I lose my job? What if the promotion didn't mean anything? What if I'm back to square one? But then I remembered the panic attack that started this whole journey. I remembered the words God spoke to me. Stop overthinking. I will guide every step. I remembered every time he'd proven faithful since then. I went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall and prayed. God, I'm scared. This is out of my control, and I don't know what's going to happen. But you do. You've guided me this far, and I'm choosing to trust you'll guide me through this too. Whatever happens, I know you're with me. When I came out, I felt calmer. Not because the situation had changed, but because my perspective had. This wasn't the end of the world. It was just another step, another moment where I had to choose trust over fear. Over the next few weeks, as the restructure details slowly came out, I made a conscious choice not to participate in the office anxiety. When people wanted to speculate about worst-case scenarios, I listened but didn't engage. When they asked if I was worried, I was honest. I'm concerned, but I'm not going to torture myself with what-ifs. We'll deal with reality when we know what reality is. Some people thought I was in denial or being naive, but Marcus understood when I told him about it. That's real faith, man. Not pretending everything's fine, but choosing to trust God even when things are uncertain. It's harder than it sounds, I admitted. Every day I have to actively choose not to spiral, but it's getting easier. Finally, 6 weeks after the initial announcement, the decisions were made. My position was safe. Actually, more than safe. They were expanding my team and giving me more responsibility, but several people I knew and respected were let go, including Sarah. I felt guilty for keeping my job when others lost theirs. I felt angry at the unfairness of it all. I felt helpless watching good people box up their desks and walk out for the last time. That weekend, I met with Sarah for coffee. She'd reached out saying she wanted to talk. I expected her to be bitter, angry, maybe even resentful that I still had my job, but when she sat down across from me, she seemed okay. Tired, but okay. "How are you?" I asked. "Honestly, I'm sad. This wasn't what I wanted, but I'm also kind of relieved." "Relieved?" She nodded. "I'd been feeling stuck for a while, like I was in the wrong place but too scared to leave, and then the decision was made for me. Now I have to take a step I wouldn't have taken on my own, and maybe that's what I needed." "What will you do now?" "I don't know yet. Update my resume, start looking, figure out what I actually want. It's terrifying, but also kind of exciting." She looked at me. "Remember what you said when I didn't get the promotion, about how sometimes the path takes detours we don't understand?" "Yeah, I think I'm starting to understand. Not completely, but enough to trust that maybe this is leading somewhere I need to go." After she left, I sat in the coffee shop thinking about her words. God's guidance didn't always look like protection from hard things. Sometimes it looked like strength to walk through them. Sometimes it looked like unexpected grace in the middle of loss. Sometimes it looked like doors closing so others could open. That night, Rachel came over to my apartment. We ordered Thai food and ate on my couch while watching a movie. Halfway through, she paused it and turned to me. "I'm really proud of you, you know." "For what?" "For how you handled this whole restructure thing, for not letting the anxiety take over, for being there for Sarah and others who lost their jobs, for continuing to trust even when things were uncertain." I thought about it. I'm not perfect at it. I still have moments where I slip back into overthinking. But I'm learning that faith isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing to trust again and again, even when it's hard. She kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I felt a rush of gratitude for her, for this moment, for the journey that had brought me here, for a God who kept his promises, who guided every step, who was teaching me to live differently. Later that night, after Rachel went home, I updated my journal. I'd been writing in it regularly, documenting this journey, recording the moments where God showed up, noting the times I chose trust over fear. I wrote, "I used to think faith meant having all the answers. I thought trusting God meant life would become easy, that he'd remove all obstacles and uncertainty. But I'm learning that's not how it works. Faith means taking the next step, even when you can't see the whole path. Trust means believing God is good, even when circumstances are hard. And his guidance isn't always about making things easy. Sometimes it's about making me stronger, braver, more capable of facing whatever comes." I closed the journal and looked at my index card, still taped to the mirror, the words as true as the day I wrote them. "Stop overthinking. God will guide every step." He had guided every step. Through job changes and health scares, through new relationships and restructures, through moments of joy and moments of fear. And I was learning, slowly but surely, to trust him more than I trusted my own anxious thoughts. It wasn't always easy, it wasn't always comfortable, but it was real, and it was transforming me from the inside out. Spring arrived, and with it came a sense of new beginnings. My mom's health was stable, work had settled into a new normal after the restructure, and my relationship with Rachel was deepening in ways that felt both exciting and comfortable. But one morning I woke up with a strange heaviness in my chest. Nothing specific had happened, no bad news, no crisis, no reason for the feeling. It was just there, sitting on me like a weight. I tried to shake it off. I went through my morning routine, read my Bible, said my prayers, looked at my index card, but the heaviness remained. At work, I couldn't focus. I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen, and all I could think about was how tired I was. Not physically tired, soul tired. Like I'd been running a marathon I didn't sign up for. Jason, one of my team members, stopped by my desk. "Hey, Daniel, you okay? You seem off today." "Yeah, I'm fine, just tired." But I wasn't fine, and by lunchtime I knew I needed help. I texted my therapist and asked if she had any openings that week. She had a cancellation that afternoon and told me to come in. Sitting in her office, I tried to explain what I was feeling. I don't understand. Things are good, really good, better than they've been in years. So why do I feel like this? Dr. Martinez, a kind woman in her 50s who'd been instrumental in my healing journey, leaned forward. Daniel, healing isn't linear. You've made incredible progress, but that doesn't mean you won't have hard days. Depression and anxiety don't just disappear because you've learned to trust God more. But I thought if I just had enough faith, if I trusted enough, I wouldn't feel like this anymore. Faith doesn't make you immune to human emotions. It gives you tools to navigate them. But you're still human. You still have a brain that can get overwhelmed, chemicals that can get out of balance, a nervous system that can get taxed. Her words made me feel both relieved and discouraged. Relieved because I wasn't failing, discouraged because I'd hoped I was past this. So what do? The same things you've been doing. Prayer, yes. Trust, yes. But also rest, grace, patience with yourself. Maybe it's time to look at whether you need additional support, medication, adjusting your workload, whatever it takes. I'd resisted the idea of medication before, thinking it meant I wasn't trusting God enough. But Dr. Martinez had helped me see it differently. Would you tell a diabetic they don't need insulin because they should just pray more? She'd asked me months ago. Would you tell someone with a broken leg to skip the cast and just have faith it'll heal? No. Then why would you expect your brain to function without support if it needs it? That evening I talked to Rachel about how I was feeling. We were at her apartment, and she was making dinner while I sat at the kitchen counter. I feel like I'm letting everyone down, I admitted. Like I should be past this by now. She stopped chopping vegetables and looked at me. Daniel, you're not letting anyone down. You're human. You've been through a lot of stress, the job changes, your mom's health scare, learning to be in a relationship again. That's a lot to process. But I've been trusting God. I've been doing everything right. Trusting God doesn't mean you never struggle. It means you don't have to struggle alone. She came around the counter and took my hands. Let me ask you something. If I came to you feeling this way, what would you tell me? I thought about it. I'd tell you to be patient with yourself, that it's okay to have hard days, that asking for help isn't weakness. Exactly. So why can't you give yourself the same grace? She was right. I'd learned to extend grace to others, but I was still harsh with myself. Still expected myself to be perfect, to never struggle, to always have it together. That night I spent time in prayer, but it was different from my usual prayers. Instead of asking God to take away the heaviness, I just sat with him in it. I didn't try to fix it or figure it out or make it go away. I just acknowledged it was there and invited God into it. And in that quiet, vulnerable space, I felt something shift. Not the heaviness lifting, not yet, but a sense that I wasn't alone in it, that God was with me in the darkness, not just on the other side of it. Over the next few days, I made some changes. I talked to my doctor about medication options for anxiety and depression. I adjusted my work schedule to include more breaks. I started saying no to commitments that would drain me. I prioritized rest, not as laziness, but as an act of stewardship over the life God had given me. And slowly the heaviness began to lift. One afternoon, Marcus called. "Hey man, want to grab lunch?" We met at a deli near his office, and as we ate, he looked at me with that perceptive way he had. "You've been going through something. Want to talk about it?" I told him about the heaviness, about feeling like I was failing, about learning to give myself grace. Marcus nodded. "I get it. I've been there. You know what helped me? Remembering that my worth isn't based on how well I'm doing. It's based on who God says I am, and He doesn't love you more on your good days and less on your hard days. Intellectually, I know that, but it's hard to believe it when I'm struggling. That's when you need to believe it most. That's when you need to lean into it. You're not loved because you're perfect, Daniel. You're loved because you're His." After lunch, I went to the park where I'd had that pivotal moment months ago, reading Philippians on a bench. I sat in the same spot and pulled out my phone to read it again. "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. I'd focused so much on the first part, not being anxious, presenting my requests, that I'd missed something in the second part. The peace of God transcends understanding. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical, and it guards your heart and mind. Guard, like a protector, like a shield, like someone standing watch. I didn't need to understand everything to have peace. I didn't need to have it all figured out. I just needed to trust that God was guarding my heart and mind, even when, especially when, I felt weak. That weekend, my mom came to visit. She'd never seen my new apartment, and I was excited to show it to her. We spent Saturday together, cooking breakfast, walking around the neighborhood, just talking. At one point she said, "You seem more settled, Daniel. Even with everything you've been going through lately, there's a peace about you that wasn't there before. I'm learning that peace doesn't mean nothing's wrong. It means knowing that even when things are wrong, God's still there." She smiled, her eyes getting misty. That's beautiful, and so true. I wish I could say that learning to trust God means life gets easier, but it doesn't. It just means you don't have to carry the weight alone. Sunday morning, I went to church. The worship felt particularly powerful that day, and during one song, I felt tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but tears of release. Like I was finally letting go of the expectation that I had to be perfect, that I had to have everything figured out, that I had to never struggle. After the service, a man I'd never met before approached me. He was probably in his 60s with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. "I hope this isn't too forward, but I felt like God wanted me to tell you something." I nodded, curious, but also a little skeptical. I'd heard people say things like that before, and it wasn't always helpful. "He wants you to know that you're right where you're supposed to be. Not where you think you should be, not where others expect you to be, but exactly where He needs you to be. And He's proud of you, not for being perfect, but for being willing, for showing up, for continuing to trust even when it's hard." I stared at him, completely undone. Those were the exact words I needed to hear, words I couldn't have known I needed until I heard them. "Thank you," I managed to say. "You have no idea how much I needed that." He smiled. "I think I do. I've been where you are, learning to trust, learning to let go, learning that God's love isn't conditional on your performance. It's one of the hardest and most beautiful journeys you'll ever take." After he walked away, I sat in the empty sanctuary for a long time. I thought about everything I'd been through since that night on my knees, the breakthroughs and the setbacks, the victories and the struggles, the moments of clarity and the moments of confusion. And I realized something profound. The journey wasn't about arriving at some perfect destination where I never struggled again. It was about learning to walk with God through every season, the good and the hard, the clear and the confusing, the joyful and the painful. That evening, Rachel came over. We ordered pizza and sat on my balcony watching the sunset. "You seem lighter today," she observed. "I feel lighter. I think I've been putting too much pressure on myself to be completely healed, completely fixed. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is just to keep walking, keep trusting, keep showing up." She reached for my hand. "I love that, and I love watching you figure this out, even when I'm a mess, especially when you're a mess, because that's when you're most real, most human, most you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I thought about God's promise to guide every step, not just the easy steps, not just the clear steps, but every step, including the stumbling ones, including the uncertain ones, including the ones where I didn't feel strong or faithful or together, every single step. And that promise, I was learning, was enough, more than enough. It was everything. That night, I added a new line to my journal. "Today, I learned that God's guidance isn't just for my good days, it's especially for my hard days. He doesn't guide me because I'm strong enough or faithful enough or healed enough. He guides me because He's good, because He's faithful, because He loves me. And that love doesn't change based on how well I'm doing. It's constant, unchanging, always there, even when, especially when, I feel weak. I closed the journal and looked at my index card one more time before bed. Stop overthinking. God will guide every step. The words were the same, but my understanding of them had deepened. God wasn't just guiding me toward some perfect future, He was guiding me through the messy present. Through the anxiety and the depression, through the doubts and the fears, through the questions and the uncertainties. He was guiding me, not because I had it all together, but because He did. And that made all the difference. Summer arrived with a heat wave that made the city feel like an oven. But despite the oppressive heat, I felt more alive than I had in years. The medication had stabilized my mood. Therapy was helping me process things in healthier ways, and I was learning to recognize the difference between wisdom and worry, between prudence and paralysis. One morning, Lisa called me into her office. I'd learned not to automatically panic at these summons, but I still felt a flutter of nervousness as I walked down the hall. "Close the door," she said, and gestured to a chair. "I wanted to talk to you about an opportunity." "Okay." Corporate is opening a new office in Seattle. They're looking for someone to go out there and build a team from the ground up, establish processes, essentially create a whole new branch of what we do here. It's a huge opportunity. And your name came up. Seattle, 3,000 miles away. A complete fresh start. Everything in me wanted to immediately start analyzing. What would this mean for my relationship with Rachel? What about my mom? What about the life I'd built here? What if I failed? What if I succeeded but hated it there? What if... I stopped myself, took a breath. When would you need an answer? You've got 2 weeks. It's a big decision. I'd understand if you want to pass, but I think you'd be great for it, Daniel. You've really grown into a leader here, and this would be a chance to prove yourself at an even higher level. I walked out of her office in a daze. Seattle. I'd never even been to Seattle. The first person I called was Marcus. "Dude, that's huge. Are you going to do it?" "I have no idea. I don't even know how to start thinking about it." Well, the old Daniel would have spent the next 2 weeks making pro-con lists and driving himself crazy. What's the new Daniel going to do? I thought about it. The new Daniel is going to pray, talk to the people who matter, and trust that God will make it clear. There you go. That's growth, man. That evening, I met Rachel for dinner. I'd been nervous about telling her, worried about how she'd react, but she listened calmly as I explained the opportunity, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I don't know. Part of me is excited. It's an incredible opportunity, but part of me doesn't want to leave everything, everyone I have here." "By everyone, do you mean me?" "Partly, yes. We're just starting to build something real, and I don't want to mess that up." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Daniel, I care about you. A lot. But I don't want to be the reason you don't pursue something that might be right for you. If this is what God's calling you to, then we'll figure it out. But what if? No what ifs. Not right now. You have 2 weeks to pray about it, to think about it, to get clarity. Let's not create problems that don't exist yet." Her wisdom and maturity astounded me. A few months ago, I would have read all kinds of meanings into her response. Was she not as invested in us? Was she trying to let me down easy? But now I could hear what she was actually saying. She trusted me to make the right decision, and she trusted God to work things out. Over the next several days, I prayed more intentionally than I'd prayed about anything in my life. Not anxious prayers, not begging for signs, just honest conversations with God. I don't know what to do. This seems like an amazing opportunity, but I'm scared. Scared of leaving, scared of failing, scared of what it might cost. Show me what you want. Make it clear. I'm trusting you. I talked to my mum. She was supportive but honest. "I'd miss you terribly, but I don't want my needs to keep you from where you're supposed to be. You're 33 years old, Daniel. You have to make decisions based on your life, not mine. I talked to my therapist. She asked me questions that helped me dig deeper into what I really wanted, what I was really afraid of. What if this isn't about choosing the right option, but about trusting that God will be with you in whichever option you choose? That question stuck with me. Maybe there wasn't one perfect choice. Maybe both options could be good, and it was just about choosing one and trusting God in it. I made a pro-con list, despite Marcus's teasing about it being an old Daniel move. But I approached it differently this time. Instead of trying to analyze every possible outcome, I just wrote down the facts. The actual, concrete facts about what each choice offered. Seattle meant professional growth, adventure, challenge, the chance to build something from scratch. Staying meant proximity to people I loved, stability, continuing to grow in the life I'd already built. Both had value, both had merit. Neither was clearly wrong. On day 10 of my 2-week decision window, I was driving home from work when I felt that familiar, gentle whisper in my spirit. Not audible words, but an impression, a sense of direction. Go. Just that. Just go. I pulled over and sat in my car, testing this impression. Was it really God? Was it my own ambition? Was it fear masquerading as faith? But the more I sat with it, the more certain I felt. God was saying go. Not because Seattle was inherently better than staying, but because this was the next step he was leading me to take. That night, I called Rachel. Can I come over? I need to talk to you. When I got to her apartment, she must have seen something in my face because she immediately said, "You're going to do it, aren't you?" I nodded. I think God's calling me to Seattle. I don't understand all the reasons why, and I'm terrified, but I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. She was quiet, and I saw her eyes get glossy with tears. But then she smiled. Then you should go. But what about us? I don't know. But I know that if this is God's plan for you, then he has a plan for us too. Maybe long distance. Maybe I end up out there eventually. Maybe something we can't even imagine right now. But I'm not going to ask you to stay just because I'm scared of losing you. I pulled her into a hug, and we stood there holding each other for a long time. When we finally pulled apart, she said, "When do you have to tell them?" "End of this week." "Then let's make the most of the time we have before you leave. No mourning something that hasn't happened yet, just being present with each other." The next day, I told Lisa I'd accept the position. She was thrilled. "You're going to do amazing things out there, Daniel. This is the right move for you." The following weeks were a whirlwind of logistics. Finding an apartment in Seattle, planning the move, transitioning my team, saying goodbyes. It was exhausting and emotional and exciting all at once. My team threw me a going-away party. Jason gave a speech that made me tear up, talking about how much I'd helped him grow, how my leadership style had changed his approach to work and life. "You taught me that it's okay not to have all the answers," he said, "that asking for help isn't weakness, that taking things one step at a time is actually the wisest way to move forward." I hadn't realized I'd been teaching those things. I was just trying to live them. Marcus took me out for one last dinner before I left. We went to the Italian place where I'd first told him about hearing God's voice. "Full circle, huh?" he said, looking around. "A lot has changed since we sat here last. Everything has changed. I've changed. You have. But you're still you. Just a version of you that's not suffocating under the weight of his own thoughts. I couldn't have done it without you, man. You've been there through everything." He shook his head. "God did this. I just showed up. But I'm grateful I got to witness it, and Seattle's not that far. We'll stay in touch." The hardest goodbye was my mom. When I went to her house the day before my flight, she hugged me for a long time. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, "not just for taking this job, but for everything. For facing your fears, for learning to trust God, for becoming the man you were always meant to be." "I'm scared, Mom. What if I fail? What if I can't do this?" She pulled back and looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Then you'll learn from it and try again. But I don't think you're going to fail. I think you're going to thrive, because you're not doing this in your own strength. You're doing it with God's guidance." My last evening in the city, Rachel and I went back to the park, where I'd had several pivotal moments in this journey. We sat on the bench where I'd read Philippians, where I'd prayed through my fear about my mom's health, where I'd learned what it meant to trust. "I'm going to miss you," she said quietly. "I'm going to miss you too. But this isn't the end. I don't know what it is, but it's not the end." "No," she agreed. "It feels more like a beginning, something new unfolding." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset, neither of us trying to plan or predict or control what came next. Just being present in the moment, trusting that the same God who'd guided us this far would continue to guide us forward. The next morning, Marcus drove me to the airport. As I grabbed my bags from his trunk, he hugged me hard. "Remember that night you called me freaking out about your mom? Remember how you thought your whole world was falling apart? Yeah. Look at where you are now. About to start a whole new adventure, leading a team, grown in your faith, healthier than you've ever been. God's been faithful, Daniel. He's going to keep being faithful." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. On the plane, as we took off and the city got smaller below me, I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. The panic attack that changed everything, the words God spoke that became my anchor, every step of growth, every moment of trust, every time I chose faith over fear. I pulled out my phone and looked at a photo of my index card. I'd left the original on my bathroom mirror in my old apartment, but I'd taken a picture of it and set it as my phone background. Stop overthinking. God will guide every step. He had guided every step, and as I flew toward an uncertain future in a city I'd never lived in, toward a challenge I wasn't sure I was ready for, I knew with absolute certainty that He would continue guiding me, not because I had everything figured out, not because I was suddenly fearless or had conquered all my anxiety, but because His faithfulness didn't depend on my strength. It depended on His character, and His character was unchanging. I was learning that faith wasn't about having a perfect plan. It was about taking the next step, even when it scared you, even when it didn't make complete sense, even when you couldn't see the whole picture, and trusting that the one who could see everything was leading you exactly where you needed to go. Seattle was waiting. A new chapter was beginning. And I was ready, not because I had it all together, but because I knew the one who did. Seattle was overwhelming at first. Everything was new. The apartment, the office, the streets, the coffee shops, even the weather. It rained constantly, a steady drizzle that felt like the city was perpetually sighing. I'd been warned about the Seattle freeze, the phenomenon where people were polite but hard to really connect with, and I felt it immediately. At work, people were professional and friendly, but surface level. Nobody invited me to lunch. Nobody asked me to join their after-work plans. For the first time in months, I felt the old loneliness creeping back in. Not just alone, but isolated, like I was watching life happen around me without being part of it. I video called Marcus on my third night there. "I think I made a mistake. I don't know anyone. I don't know where anything is. I feel like I'm starting completely from scratch." "You are starting from scratch," he said. "That's literally what you signed up for. But remember, you're not starting from scratch with God. He's still there. He's still guiding you. It doesn't feel like it right now. Faith isn't a feeling, man. It's a choice. Choose to trust even when you can't feel it." After we hung up, I sat in my empty apartment. I hadn't even unpacked most of my boxes yet, and just breathed. Marcus was right. I'd expected this move to feel exciting and adventurous, but instead it felt hard and lonely. That didn't mean it was wrong. It just meant it was difficult. I got down on my knees, something I'd been doing more regularly since that first desperate prayer months ago. "God, I don't know what I'm doing. This is hard, harder than I expected, but you told me to come here and I'm trusting that you have a reason. Please show me. Please help me. Please don't let me have misunderstood you." The next day at work, I threw myself into building the team. I had interviews scheduled, systems to set up, processes to create. The work itself was challenging but exciting. I was doing something that mattered, building something from the ground up. During one interview, I met a guy named Alex who would become crucial to the team. He was talented, experienced, and had a calm confidence that reminded me of Marcus. When I offered him the position, he accepted immediately. "I've been praying for the right opportunity," he said. "This feels like an answer. You're a Christian." "Yeah." "Are you?" "Yeah. Actually, my faith has been pretty central to getting me through the last year." Alex smiled. "Well then, I think we're going to work well together." Having Alex on the team changed everything. He helped me hire others, and slowly we built a small but solid group. More than that, he became a friend. He invited me to his church, introduced me to people, helped me navigate the city. "Seattle's different," he told me over coffee one Saturday. "People here are careful about letting people in, but once you're in, they're loyal. Just give it time." I was learning that give it time was becoming a recurring theme in my life. Give trust time to develop. Give relationships time to deepen. Give God's plan time to unfold. But I still missed home. I missed Rachel most of all. We video called every few days, texted throughout the day, but it wasn't the same as being together. I could see she was struggling too. "I miss you," she said one night, her face pixelated on my screen. "I know we said we'd figure this out, but it's harder than I thought it would be." "I know, I miss you too, but I still feel like I'm supposed to be here, like there's a reason for this season." "I trust that. I do. It's just hard." A few weeks later, Rachel called me with news. "I had a crazy thought, and I need to talk it through with you." "Okay, what if I came to Seattle? Not to follow you, I'd never make a major life decision just for a relationship. But I've been feeling restless at my job for a while, and I was looking at opportunities online, and there's an opening at a company there that's actually perfect for what I've been wanting to do." My heart jumped. "Really? You'd consider moving here?" "I'd consider it. But I need to pray about it, think about it, make sure it's the right move for me, not just for us. Can you give me space to figure that out without pressure?" "Of course. I want you to do what's right for you." Over the next few weeks, Rachel went through her own process of discernment. She interviewed for the position remotely. She prayed. She talked to her family and friends, and eventually she called me with her decision. I got the job offer, and I feel like I'm supposed to take it. Not because you're there, though that's definitely a bonus, but because I genuinely think this is where God's leading me next. "Are you sure? I don't want you to have any regrets." "Daniel, I've learned from watching you that following God's leading isn't about having zero fear or doubt. It's about trusting Him in spite of those things. I'm scared, but I'm also excited, and I feel peace about it." 2 months later, Rachel moved to Seattle. Having her there transformed everything. We explored the city together, found new favorite restaurants, hiked in the mountains on weekends. But we also navigated what it meant to be in the same city again without falling back into old patterns. One evening, we were walking along the waterfront when she stopped and looked at me seriously. "Can we talk about something?" "Of course. Being here with you is amazing, but I realized I've been making you my primary source of support and community, and that's not healthy. I need to build my own life here. My own friends, my own routines, my own relationship with God that isn't filtered through you." I felt a twinge of hurt, but recognized the wisdom in what she was saying. "You're right. I've been leaning on you pretty heavily too. Maybe we both need to be more intentional about building our individual lives here. Not because I don't want to be with you, but because I want to be with you from a place of wholeness, not neediness." Adieu. We started being more intentional about balance. We still spent time together, but we also made space for our own individual growth. Rachel joined a women's Bible study. I started meeting with Alex and a few other guys for breakfast before work once a week. It was in one of those breakfast meetings that Alex said something that hit me hard. "Daniel, can I ask you something? You talk a lot about learning to trust God, about not overthinking. But I've noticed you still seem to second-guess yourself a lot, like you're waiting for permission to be confident." I was defensive at first. "I'm just trying to stay humble. There's a difference between humility and insecurity. Humility is knowing your abilities come from God. Insecurity is constantly doubting whether you're good enough. I think you're still struggling with the second one. He was right. Even though I'd grown so much, even though I'd learned to trust God's guidance, I still had this underlying belief that I wasn't really qualified, wasn't really ready, wasn't really enough. That night, I journaled about it. God, why do I still feel like an imposter? You've proven yourself faithful over and over. You've given me this position, this team, this opportunity. Why can't I just believe I'm supposed to be here? As I wrote, I felt that gentle whisper again. Because you're still trying to earn it. You're still trying to prove you deserve it. But my grace doesn't work that way. You don't have to earn my guidance. You don't have to deserve my love. It's freely given. I sat with that truth for a long time. I'd been so focused on learning to trust God for direction that I'd missed an even deeper lesson. Learning to receive His love without conditions, without performance, without earning it. The next Sunday, the sermon at Alex's church was about the prodigal son. The pastor focused not on the son who left, but on the older brother who stayed, the one who did everything right, but still felt like he had to earn his father's approval. Some of you have never run away from God, the pastor said, but you're exhausted from trying to perform for Him. You think His love is based on how well you follow the rules, how strong your faith is, how little you struggle. But that's not how God's love works. It's not conditional. It's not earned. It's gift. I felt tears streaming down my face. That was me. I was the older brother, trying to earn what had already been freely given. After the service, Rachel found me in the lobby. "You okay? I saw you crying." I think I just realized something important. I've been trying to earn God's guidance, His approval, His love. Like if I just trust enough, pray enough, do enough right, then I'll deserve His faithfulness. But that's not how it works. She squeezed my hand. No, it's not. His love isn't a reward for good behavior. It's the foundation everything else is built on. That week, I started paying attention to how often I approached God from a place of performance. How often my prayers were really just me, trying to prove I was doing things right. How often I saw His guidance as something I had to earn rather than something He freely offered. And I started practicing something new, receiving. Just receiving His love, His guidance, His grace, without trying to earn it or repay it or prove I deserved it. It was harder than I expected. Receiving felt vulnerable, almost dangerous. Like if I stopped trying to earn His love, I might lose it. But slowly, I was learning that the opposite was true. The more I simply received, the more I experienced the fullness of what was already mine. One afternoon, I was in a meeting with my team when one of them, a woman named Jennifer, made a suggestion that was genuinely better than my plan. Old Daniel would have felt threatened, would have worried about looking incompetent, but I just said, "That's brilliant. Let's do that instead." After the meeting, Alex pulled me aside. "That was really cool, how you received her idea without getting defensive. I'm learning that I don't have to have all the answers. That's actually the whole point, trusting that God will provide what I need when I need it, sometimes through other people." He smiled. "You've changed a lot since you got here, man. You seem more at peace." I'm learning that peace doesn't come from having everything figured out. It comes from trusting the one who does. That evening, Rachel and I had dinner at my apartment. I'd finally finished unpacking all my boxes, and the place actually felt like home now. "I'm proud of you," she said. "I know this move was scary, but look at what you've built. Look at who you've become." "I'm not who I was," I agreed. "But I'm also not who I thought I'd be. I thought by now I'd have conquered my anxiety completely, that I'd never overthink again, that I'd be this perfectly faithful person. But I'm learning that growth isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about choosing trust one more time, even after you've failed at it, even after you've doubted, even after you've struggled." She smiled. "That's real faith. Not the fake version where you pretend to have it all together, the real version where you keep showing up, keep trusting, keep taking the next step, even when you're scared." Later that night, I stood on my balcony looking out at the Seattle skyline. The rain had stopped, and the city lights reflected off the wet streets below. I thought about everything that had led me to this moment. The panic attack, the desperate prayer, the words God spoke that changed everything. Stop overthinking. I will guide every step. He had guided every step. Through job changes and health scares, through relationships and relocations, through doubts and fears and moments of weakness. He'd guided me not because I was strong enough or faithful enough or deserving enough, but because he was good, because he was faithful, because his love wasn't conditional on my performance. I was beginning to understand that the journey wasn't about arriving at a place where I never struggled. It was about learning to walk with God through every struggle, trusting that he was present in the mess, that his guidance was constant even when I couldn't feel it, that his love was unconditional even when I failed. And that truth, that beautiful, terrifying, liberating truth, was changing everything. 6 months into my Seattle life, I received an unexpected email. It was from Sarah, my former team member, who'd been let go during the restructure. The subject line simply read, "Thank you." I opened it with curiosity. "Daniel, I know this is out of the blue, but I wanted to reach out and tell you something. When I lost my job, I was devastated. But you said something to me that I've thought about almost every day since, that sometimes the path takes detours we don't understand in the moment. You were right. Losing that job forced me to figure out what I actually wanted to do with my life, and I just accepted a position that's everything I didn't even know I was looking for. I'm happier than I've been in years. Thank you for being kind to me during that awful time, and for planting that seed of hope. I hope you're doing well." I read the email 3 times, feeling emotional. I'd said those words to her, not knowing if they'd help, just trying to offer some comfort in her pain. And now, months later, she was telling me they'd made a difference. I replied immediately, telling her how happy I was for her, how her email had encouraged me more than she knew. When I hit send, I felt God whisper something in my spirit. "This is why I brought you through what you went through, so you could help others through their own struggles." It was a perspective shift I hadn't considered. My journey through anxiety and overthinking, my learning to trust. It wasn't just for me. It was equipping me to help others. That week, one of my team members, a young guy named Tyler, came to my office looking stressed. "Can I talk to you about something personal?" "Of course. Close the door." He sat down and took a deep breath. "I've been struggling with anxiety, like really bad. I can't sleep. I'm constantly worried about everything, and it's starting to affect my work. I don't know what to do." I felt a surge of compassion. I knew exactly what he was feeling. "Tyler, thank you for trusting me with this. First thing I want you to know, you're not weak, you're not failing, and you're not alone. I've struggled with anxiety and overthinking for years. Still do sometimes." His eyes widened. "Really? You always seem so calm and in control." "That's relatively recent, believe me. Want to hear my story?" I spent the next hour telling him about my journey. The panic attack, hearing God's voice, learning to trust instead of spiral. I told him about therapy, medication, the daily practices that helped me. I told him about the setbacks and the breakthroughs. When I finished, Tyler looked like he might cry. I thought I was the only one. I thought something was wrong with me. "There's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is just trying to protect you, but it's working overtime. The good news is you can learn to manage it. It takes work, but it's possible." I connected him with my therapist's practice for a referral, gave him the name of my doctor, and told him we could check in regularly if it would help. "Can I ask you something?" Tyler said as he was leaving. "How do you know when to trust God versus when to take practical steps like therapy and medication?" "I don't think it's versus. I think it's both. God gave us brains that can struggle, and he also gave us doctors and therapists and medication. Using those resources isn't a lack of faith. It's stewarding the tools he's provided. I pray and I take my medication. I trust God and I go to therapy. It's not either or." After he left, I sat at my desk feeling a strange sense of purpose. My struggles hadn't been wasted. They'd become a bridge to help someone else. That evening, Rachel and I had dinner at a new restaurant downtown. Things between us had gotten even stronger in recent months. We'd learned to balance closeness with independence, to support each other without losing ourselves, to build a relationship on foundation of trust rather than need. "I have something to tell you," she said over appetizers, and my stomach clenched with anxiety. Those words never sounded good. "Okay, it's good news, I promise," she smiled. "My company offered me a promotion. It's a big jump, more responsibility, more pay, more visibility, but it also means I'll be traveling a lot, like maybe a week or two every month." I felt conflicting emotions, pride for her, excitement about the opportunity, but also sadness about the time apart. "That's amazing, Rachel. You deserve this. But I'll miss you when you're traveling. Not in a needy way, I know I'll be fine. Just, I enjoy having you here. I'll miss you too, but I think this is what I'm supposed to do, and I think we're strong enough to handle the distance." She was right. 6 months ago, the idea of her traveling constantly would have sent me spiraling. What if she meets someone else? What if the distance pulls us apart? What if? But I'd learned that what-ifs were just fear dressed up as preparation. "Then you should absolutely take it. I'm proud of you." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you for not making this about you, for supporting what's right for me. That's what love does, right? It supports, it trusts, it celebrates the other person's growth even when it's inconvenient." As I said the words, I realized something. I'd just used the word love. We hadn't said that to each other yet, had been dancing around it for months, Rachel noticed. "Did you just say love?" I took a breath. This was one of those moments where I could overthink and second guess, or I could just be honest. "Yeah, I did, because I do. I love you, Rachel." Her eyes got teary. "I love you too. I have for a while. Why didn't you say it?" "I was waiting for you to be ready. I knew you had to get to a place where you trusted yourself and trusted us enough to say it without it being driven by fear or need." She understood me better than I understood myself sometimes. That weekend, Marcus flew out to visit. It was his first time seeing my Seattle life, and I was excited to show him around. We hiked in the mountains on Saturday, and standing at the summit, looking out over the city and the water beyond, Marcus turned to me. "You know what's different about you now?" "What?" "You're present, like really present. Before, even when you were physically with someone, your mind was always somewhere else, replaying the past or worrying about the future. But now you're actually here. It's taken a lot of work to get here. I know, I've watched the whole journey. And I'm proud of you, man. You didn't just learn to manage your anxiety, you let God transform you. I'm not done yet. I still have moments where I slip back into old patterns. None of us are done. That's the point. We're all works in progress. But you're progressing, and that's what matters. Sunday, we went to Alex's church together. The sermon was about Peter walking on water, specifically the moment when he took his eyes off Jesus and started to sink. Peter didn't fail because he stepped out of the boat, the pastor said. He stepped out in faith, which was brave. He started to sink when he looked at the circumstances instead of at Jesus. But even then, Jesus didn't let him drown. He reached out and caught him. That's the gospel. Not that we never struggle, not that we never doubt, but that when we do, Jesus is right there. After church, Marcus, Alex, Rachel, and I went to lunch. Sitting around the table with these people who'd become so important to me, I felt overwhelming gratitude. "I want to say something," I announced. They all looked at me. A little over a year ago, I had a panic attack in my apartment. I was drowning in my own thoughts, paralyzed by fear, exhausted from trying to control everything. That night, I heard God speak to me. He told me to stop overthinking, that He would guide every step, and He has. Through all of you, through circumstances I never could have planned, through moments of struggle and moments of breakthrough, I'm not the same person I was a year ago, and I'm grateful for every step that got me here. Marcus raised his glass. To Daniel, and to the God who guides every step. We all clinked glasses, and in that moment, I felt complete peace. Not because my life was perfect, it wasn't. Not because I'd conquered all my struggles, I hadn't. but because I'd learned to trust the one who was with me through it all. That week at work, corporate announced they were so pleased with how the Seattle office was developing that they wanted to replicate the model in 2 more cities. They asked if I'd be willing to consult on the launches. A year ago, I would have immediately said yes, and then spent weeks second-guessing the decision, worrying about whether I'd be good enough, whether I could handle it, what might go wrong. Instead, I asked for a day to think about it and pray about it. That evening, I sat in my apartment and had an honest conversation with God. Is this the next step? I can see how it would be good for my career, how it would help the company, but is it what you want for me? Am I supposed to say yes because it's a good opportunity, or am I supposed to say no because you have something different for me? I didn't hear an audible answer, but I felt a peace about saying yes. Not a dramatic certainty, just a quiet assurance that this was the next right step. The following morning, I told Lisa I'd do it. Excellent. This is really going to set you up for bigger things, Daniel. We're watching your career trajectory closely. Bigger things. A year ago, that phrase would have excited and terrified me in equal measure. Now it just felt like another step on a path I was learning to trust. That night, I FaceTimed my mom. She looked healthy and happy, fully recovered from her scare earlier in the year. Tell me everything. How's work? How's Rachel? How are you? I filled her in on all the developments, the consulting opportunity, Rachel's promotion, Tyler's anxiety struggles, and how I'd been able to help him. Daniel, do you realize what God's done in your life? Not just what he's done for you, but what he's doing through you. You're helping people now because you were willing to be helped. That's beautiful. After we hung up, I thought about her words. I'd started this journey desperate to fix my own broken mind, to stop the constant overthinking that was ruining my life. But somewhere along the way, it had become about more than just me. It had become about learning lessons I could share, about developing compassion I could offer, about building a testimony that might help someone else. My pain hadn't been pointless. My struggles hadn't been wasted. They'd been preparation. I opened my journal and wrote, I used to think the goal was to get to a place where I never struggled, never doubted, never overthought anything. But I'm realizing that's not the goal. The goal is to learn to walk with God through every struggle, to trust Him in every doubt, to choose faith over fear again and again. Not perfectly, but consistently. Not without failing, but without giving up. The journey isn't about arriving at perfection. It's about becoming someone who knows how to follow, how to trust, how to take one more step even when the path is unclear. And that person, that's who I'm becoming. I closed the journal and looked out my window at the Seattle night. Rain was falling gently, washing the streets clean, and somewhere in the distance I could hear the sound of the city continuing its endless rhythm. I thought about that index card I'd written so many months ago, about the words that had become my anchor. Stop overthinking. God will guide every step. He had guided every step, and He would continue guiding day by day, moment by moment, decision by decision. I didn't need to see the whole path. I just needed to take the next step, and for the first time in my life, that was enough. A year and a half after moving to Seattle, I found myself standing in front of a group of 50 people at a church on a Wednesday night. They'd asked me to share my testimony, something I'd never done publicly before. I was nervous, but it was a different kind of nervous than I used to feel. Not the paralyzing anxiety that came from overthinking every possible outcome, but the natural nervousness of doing something new and vulnerable. I looked out at the faces in front of me and took a breath. My name is Daniel Carter, and I want to tell you about the night God spoke to me, the night He told me to stop overthinking because He would guide every step. I told them everything, about the panic attack, the desperation, the moment I heard God's voice, about learning to trust, about the struggles and setbacks, about medication and therapy and daily practices. I told them about the index card on my mirror, about the job changes and relocations, about the people God had placed in my life. I used to think faith meant having all the answers, I said. I thought trusting God meant life would become easy, that He'd remove all obstacles and uncertainty. But that's not what happened. Life is still hard sometimes. I still have days where anxiety creeps back in. I still have moments where I want to overthink and control and figure everything out myself. I paused, seeing people nodding, recognizing their own struggles in my words. But here's what's different. I've learned that God's presence is constant even when my feelings aren't. I've learned that His guidance doesn't depend on my strength or my perfect faith. I've learned that taking one step at a time, trusting Him with each step, is enough. More than enough. It's everything. After I finished speaking, several people came up to talk to me. A woman in her 40s told me she'd been struggling with anxiety for 20 years and had never heard anyone talk about it in church before. A college kid told me he'd been feeling like a failure for needing therapy, but my words helped him see it differently. But the conversation that impacted me most was with an older man, probably in his 70s. Son, thank you for being honest about your struggles. Too many young people think they have to have it all together to serve God, but the truth is, God uses broken people. He always has. Your brokenness isn't disqualifying. It's what makes you relatable, what makes your testimony powerful. His words stayed with me as I drove home that night. I'd spent so much of my life trying to hide my struggles, thinking they made me less valuable, less useful, less worthy. But they'd actually become the very thing God was using to help others. Rachel was waiting for me when I got home. She'd been at a conference in Boston all week and had just flown in that evening. "How did it go?" she asked, pulling me into a hug. "It was scary and amazing. People really connected with it." "Of course they did. Your story is powerful, Daniel." We sat on the couch and she told me about her conference. Her career was thriving. She'd been promoted again and was now leading a major initiative for her company. We'd learned to navigate her travel schedule, my busy work life, and still maintain a strong relationship. "Can we talk about something?" she said, and I recognized that serious tone. "Of course. We've been together for almost 2 years now, and I love you. I love the life we're building. But I need to know, do you see a future for us? Like a long-term future?" I'd thought about this question many times, not anxiously overthinking it, but genuinely considering it, and I knew the answer. "Yes, I do. I want to marry you, Rachel. Not right this second. I want to do it right, plan it properly, pick the perfect ring. But yes, I see a future with you. A lifetime." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Good, because I see that too." "Were you worried I didn't?" "Not worried exactly. But we've both been so focused on our individual growth, on not being needy, on building healthy independence. I just wanted to make sure we were still building towards something together." "We are, I promise." A few weeks later, I flew back to my hometown for a long weekend. I hadn't been back since moving to Seattle, and I was excited to see everyone. Marcus picked me up from the airport, and we went straight to our old Italian restaurant. "This place looks exactly the same," I said, looking around. "Some things don't change, but you have. Man, you really have." We caught up on everything. His job, his dating life, our mutual friends. And then he asked the question I'd been expecting. "So are you going to propose to Rachel?" I smiled. "Yeah, soon. I'm planning it. How do you feel about it?" The old Daniel would be spiraling right now, analyzing every possible outcome. "Honestly, I feel peaceful, excited, a little nervous, but in a good way. I know she's the one. I know this is what I want, and I trust that God's brought us together for a reason." That's growth, man. Real growth. The next day, I visited my mom. Walking into her house, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. So much had changed since I'd lived here, since those dark days when I couldn't see a way forward. Mom made coffee, and we sat in her kitchen talking for hours. She wanted to know everything, every detail about Seattle, about Rachel, about work, about my faith journey. "I'm so grateful for how God's worked in your life," she said at one point. "Not just what He's done, but who you've become. You're strong in ways I never expected. Not the kind of strength that comes from having everything figured out, but the kind that comes from trusting God, even when you don't. You taught me that. You and Marcus and so many others. I didn't do this alone. None of us do. That's the beauty of community, of the body of Christ. We're all holding each other up. Before I left, she handed me something, a small wooden cross, simple and smooth. Your grandfather made this. He struggled with anxiety too, you know. He used to keep this in his pocket, and whenever he felt overwhelmed, he'd hold it and remember that he wasn't alone. I want you to have it. I held the cross, feeling the weight of family history, of struggles passed down through generations, but also of faith passed down, of learning to trust. Thank you, Mom. This means everything. Back in Seattle, life continued its rhythm. Work was challenging but fulfilling. The Seattle office was thriving, and the consulting work for the new offices was going well. Rachel's career was flourishing. Our relationship was strong and healthy, but I also noticed something else. I was being asked to speak more. Churches wanted to hear my testimony. Young professionals groups wanted me to talk about anxiety and faith. Tyler, who I'd helped months ago, asked if I'd consider starting a small group for people struggling with mental health issues. At first I resisted. I wasn't a pastor or a counselor. I was just a guy who'd learned some hard lessons, but the more I prayed about it, the more I felt God nudging me toward it. So I started a small group. 7 people showed up to the first meeting. Tyler, a few others from work, some people from church. We met every other week and we just talked honestly about our struggles with anxiety, depression, overthinking, fear. It was messy and vulnerable and beautiful. People shared things they'd never told anyone. They cried, laughed, supported each other, prayed for each other, and slowly, we all grew. One evening, after a particularly powerful meeting, Alex pulled me aside. You know you're doing something really important here, right? You're creating space for people to be real, to be broken, to be in process. That's rare. I'm just doing what others did for me. Marcus, you, my therapist, my mom, you all created space for me to be honest about my struggles. I'm just passing it on. That's discipleship, man. That's the gospel lived out. 3 months later, I took Rachel to the park, where I'd had so many pivotal moments in my journey. The same bench where I'd read Philippians, where I'd prayed through fear, where we'd sat together before I moved to Seattle. It was a sunny afternoon, rare for Seattle, and the park was full of families and couples enjoying the weather. Why are we here? Rachel asked as we sat down. This place is special to me. A lot of important moments in my journey happened here, and I wanted this moment to happen here too. I got down on one knee, and her hands flew to her mouth. Rachel, you've walked with me through one of the most transformative seasons of my life. You've loved me in my strength and in my weakness. You've supported my growth without trying to control it. You've been patient with my process, honest about your own struggles, and consistent in your faith. I want to spend the rest of my life walking with you, trusting God together, taking one step at a time. Will you marry me? She was crying and nodding before I even finished the question. Yes, yes, of course, yes. I slipped the ring on her finger, and we sat there on that bench holding each other, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. That evening we called everyone, her family, my mom, Marcus, Alex. The news spread quickly, and by the next day, congratulations were pouring in from every corner of our lives. But later that night, after all the excitement had died down, I sat alone in my apartment and just reflected on everything, on how far I'd come, on how much God had done, on the journey from that desperate night on my knees to this moment of joy and promise. I pulled out my journal and wrote, I used to think the goal was to stop struggling, to reach some finish line where I had it all figured out, where anxiety was gone forever, where faith came easy. But I've learned that's not how life works. The goal isn't to stop struggling. It's to learn to trust God in the midst of struggle. It's to take one more step even when the path is unclear. It's to choose faith over fear, again and again, day after day. I continued. God told me He would guide every step, and He has. Not always in the ways I expected, not always in the ways I wanted, but always faithfully. He guided me through panic attacks and health scares, through job changes and relocations, through loneliness and connection, through doubt and faith. Every single step, he was there, and every single step he will continue to be there. I closed the journal and looked at my phone background. The photo of that index card I'd written so long ago. Stop overthinking. God will guide every step. Those words had changed my life. Not because they were magical or because they fixed everything instantly, but because they pointed me toward a truth that transformed everything. I didn't have to figure it all out. I didn't have to control every outcome. I didn't have to carry the weight of my life alone. All I had to do was trust and take the next step, and trust again, and take another step. One step at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time. That's how faith works. That's how transformation happens. That's how God guides. Not by removing all uncertainty, but by being present in it. Not by making life easy, but by giving us strength for the hard parts. Not by answering all our questions, but by being the answer we actually need. I thought about the small group I was leading, about the people I'd been able to help because of my own struggles. I thought about Tyler, about Sarah, about the woman at church who'd never heard anyone talk about anxiety before. My pain hadn't been wasted. My struggles had purpose, not because they were good in themselves, but because God had used them to shape me, to equip me, to position me to help others. And that, I realized, was the real miracle. Not that God had fixed me, though he was healing me day by day, step by step, but that he was using even my brokenness, even my struggles, even my imperfect journey to bring hope to others. I stood and walked to my window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. This city that had felt so foreign and overwhelming when I first arrived now felt like home, because home wasn't just a place. It was knowing who you were and whose you were. It was living with purpose and walking in faith. It was trusting that wherever God led, that's where home would be. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. I love you. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for being brave enough to follow God to Seattle. Thank you for being you. I smiled and texted back. I love you too. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Another text came in, this time from Marcus. Proud of you, brother. From that night you called me crying to now, engaged, thriving, helping others. God's been faithful. He was right. God had been faithful. In every moment, in every step, in every season. And as I stood there in my apartment, engaged to an incredible woman, leading a team I loved, helping people navigate their own struggles, I felt overwhelming gratitude. Not because life was perfect, it wasn't. Not because I'd conquered all my struggles, I hadn't. But because I'd learned to trust the one who was with me through it all. Stop overthinking. I will guide every step. He had. He was. He would. And that promise, I knew with absolute certainty, would carry me through whatever came next. Through marriage and career challenges, through future struggles and future victories, through every season, every change, every unexpected turn, one step at a time, guided by the one who knew the path, even when I couldn't see it, held by the one who loved me, even when I couldn't feel it, led by the one who'd been faithful in every season and would continue to be faithful in every season to come. This was faith, not perfect, not without struggle, but real and alive and transforming. This was trust. Not blind, not naive, but rooted in experience, in evidence of God's faithfulness, in the conviction that comes from walking with Him through both sunshine and storm. This was my story, and it was still being written, one guided step at a time,